Slider outside 1-1. Postseason last year, he certainly announced himself. 5 homers and 6 ribbies with a 333 average in 9 games. He did everything you could possibly want him to do. Great OPS, 1.262. That was
Hello, good evening, Mr. Cio Castillo. Nice seeing you. Chanel, Termina, I'm good. Barbara, nice seeing you. Superintendent Miller, and all the four attendees, Mr. and Mrs. Terry, Lauren Bond, Deb Wilkins, Ms. Escarado, and Vance V. Chanel, if you want to either promote everyone or give them speaking rights. There you go. I'd much rather have an open round table than only the outskirts. And if we all should be able to, have a say, have a talk.
We're all pretty civilized.
I know you keep me honest. That much I know. Hi, Emily.
The male Emily. I don't know. That's Officer Kingston.
Oh,
Not then again. I'm covering for her once again.
My bad, Mr. Marte.
Don't let.
Who's there from the 33rd and 34th?
Hey, Inspector Castillo is on for the 34th precinct.
Oh, hi. You haven't met me before. It's nice to meet you in person finally. For many years, I was the secretary of your community council before you were around. I go way back to what's the name? Captain Morello. Through yeah, way back then, all the way through oh, I'm blanking out for a second, but your next two captains, their names are right in front of me.
Raimundo Mundo? Is that
Yeah, Raimundo Mundo, and then his assistant, and what?
Were you there for Andrea or no?
Oh yes, Andrea knows me very well. Oh yes, when he was the night captain, and then when he came with the Central Park, and then he came back and became the El Jefe, right? Exactly. He was very, very well liked in the precinct. I mean, I think your officers probably told you that both Mundo and were and he were very well liked in the precinct.
Yeah, two good guys, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, it's 7:04. Now that we've got an acquaintance with one another, welcome once again to our public safety meeting. I'm gonna call the meeting to order, and we're not gonna introduce ourselves. Most of us are familiar faces, but those of you who have not participated in our meetings, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a run around. Public safety, as is defined, is the well-being of the public. And we're very fortunate to have those people in charge of our public safety, such as DA Minaya, Ms. Cio Castillo, and Mr. Marte from the 33rd, and our guest, wherever you are, welcome. Tonight, we usually get presentations from the 33rd and the 34th. Shifted up a little. We're gonna start with Ms. Minaya from the DS office. You can unmute yourself, Ms. Minaya.
Stick to your agenda, Eleazar.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna shuffle it a little.
Oh, I hate it when you shuffle. All right, so good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to hear and see most of you. Like your good chair said, my name is Jocelyn Minaya, and I am the director of the District Attorney's Washington Heights office. I am going to be very brief today. The only announcement that I have for the committee is the office's announcement of the creation of the first ever Workers Protection Unit to combat wage theft and protect New Yorkers from unsafe conditions. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm working with your chair, Mr. Bueno, to bring you a presentation for our next public safety meeting. on this very topic so that they can go into detail on what the unit is going to be about and what it entails. We did announce recently the indictment of two brothers who own a construction company that actually were indicted for this very thing, wage theft and actually assault of two of their workers. They were counting on the fact that these workers were day laborers and likely undocumented. So they were counting on the fact that these men would not come forward, and thankfully they did. So those are the two first indictments out of this workers' protection unit, and that was occurring in Harlem. So we're excited. It's not only going to be for the construction work area, it's also going to be across the board. Any person who is conducting this kind of activity against their workers, whether it be not paying them their due wage, not paying them overtime. From what I understand, we can go back up to a year to investigate these complaints. So I'm looking forward to bringing that information to the committee on our next meeting, which I believe is April 7th, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm sure your chair will expand further on it. The other thing that just came hot off the press, and I know it's not here in Harlem, but I'm sure a lot of us heard about it, that elderly gentleman from Ray's Candy Store down in the East Village that was assaulted by these two men. I'm sure you all saw the images of this elderly gentleman with this huge black eye. And YPD did tremendous work in apprehending these two individuals right away. Mr. Ray is what I'll call him, although I'm not sure that that's his name, the elderly gentleman. He wasn't the only victim on that day of these two perpetrators. So I'm very happy that NYPD were able to get them off the streets, and we actually just indicted them today as well. For those that don't know, assaulting anyone above the age of 60 is considered a felony. For most people, it would be a misdemeanor. But if you assault someone over the age of 60, we consider that elder abuse, and that is a felony. So hopefully these guys are looking at very serious consequences for what they did to Mr. Ray and to the other victims on that day. And that's all that I have for the committee today.
I have a question to ask.
Yeah, hang on a second, Barbara. Before I open up the floor for questions, I'd like to, should have done in the beginning, introduce a lot of our board members that are present in tonight's meeting. I have Joel Kisabrel, Jumirna Alcover, Luana Ferreira, Rabbi Yalinsky, and Barbara Fraser. So these are the people that actually do the hard work. So I'm just here trying to facilitate this meeting at the best as possible. So floor is open. Does anyone have any questions? Barbara, I'm assuming you're going first. So
all right, I have a question. I'm glad that you started this wage and unfair labor practices unit. Excellent. And often it takes a special focus, a special unit to really get something going. My question is this: we have, I believe it was last said that we've had over 40,000 asylum seekers come to this city. And I assume that there's many more who weren't brought officially here. I'm very concerned that many of these young girls who come unaccompanied, and they have supposedly numbers on their arms and so forth, are being put into the sex trade or household slavery. Have you begun an initiative to crack down on this, prosecute this, investigate this?
Well, the first thing we need to do is receive a complaint, right? So
Well,
if someone's coming forward with a complaint that they're being trafficked, of course, we're going to investigate it and look into it. My hope is that them being here through the efforts, as asylum seekers, is because they're running from that very trade. So if someone comes forward with a complaint, of course we will. We can't initiate an investigation based on an assumption. There has to be a victim.
The problem with that is that these women and girls that are brought that way, the coyotes or the controllers make it very clear that they know where their families live back in the villages, in the home countries, and that they will kill their families if they come forward.
I understand what you're saying, Barbara, but if we don't have a physical person come before us and say, I want to make a complaint, that this is happening to me, who are we going to investigate? Do you understand? So it's a
Right.
little more complex than that. We are working with the asylum seekers that are in Manhattan, making sure that they know where we are and the services that we offer and what's available. What we are seeing is sadly an uptick in domestic violence reports coming from the shelters and the hotels. So we are addressing that. I'm not sure that we've gotten any claims of human trafficking yet. But yes, if they come forward and they speak to us, everything has a way of getting investigated and not putting anyone's lives in jeopardy. So thank you for that, Barbara.
Yeah, Jocelyn, a month ago or so, there was an announcement of a joint venture between the DS office and NYPD to address the more than 1,300 illegal cannabis dispensaries throughout the city of New York. There's been an uptick in children being exposed. I don't want to say poison, but because they haven't died, but some of them have experimented with this cannabis edibles. Is there any updates as to where the crackdown is and where we are with it?
So I believe in our last meeting, Eleazar, I announced our efforts in trying to, at the very least, target those stores that are advertising or displaying their products to entice children. We're definitely with our NYPD partners and the sheriff's office going after these people. So we're mainly concentrating on those that are running unlicensed dispensaries, quote unquote. And what I did report last month was that we sent out over 400 letters to these smoke shops or stores, bodegas, whatever you want to call them, that are selling or that could be suspected of selling cannabis illegally without a license. So we haven't heard of direct cases where someone is saying a child ingested this or they were sold that. But I could be wrong. I'm saying we, meaning I. But definitely if anyone suspects of a store that is using this type of advertisement or displays or whatever the case may be, as we know, there's only, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Inspector Castillo, maybe three places that are authorized to sell cannabis legally. And I highly doubt that they are displaying their wares and or let any children within their store. But if anyone knows of any location, and I've gotten a few tips, especially up in Inwood, of a few stores that actually are displaying their wares in a manner that could be enticing to children, please let me know right away, and we'll add them to our high priority list. So for those who weren't here last month, the idea is we are taking advantage of the real property law, which is of course a civil law, but we're asking landlords to evict people that we know are selling cannabis illegally. And we are asking landlords to send them notice of eviction. If the landlord fails to respond within 5 days, we have the authority to take over those proceedings, and we will. So in the next meeting or in the meeting after, because I don't want to bogart our next meeting, take away from the wage theft, I'll ask my office to see where we are, if we have actually had to jump in, has anyone responded, or what the status of that is. But Eleazar, I know you wanted to partner with our office to see how we can educate parents or see what the efforts could be. So you and I will talk further and see what that's going to look like, and I'm happy to do so with you.
Good. So let's transition right into the 34th precinct, since you mentioned it. Señor Castillo.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Oh, great. Thank you.
See your hand. Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is Julio Batista, Neo Presbyterian. So Jocelyn, I was ask you, in terms of the shops, I noticed that we have a smoke shop right on 168th, 169th. a couple of doors south of where Coogan's used to be. And just want to know if you have gotten any reports or anything, considering that, we have the shelter, we have a lot of, incidents of drug abuse around that area, whether that has been one of the locations that you've received any complaints from?
I have not personally. I don't know that the main office hasn't. And like that one, Julio, I'm sure if you walk along Broadway, you'll see how many more there are. The issue is if they're just selling, right, if what they're displaying is cigarettes and tobacco products and the pipes or whatever, none of these things are illegal. So the complaint would have to be that someone actually bought cannabis from that location or edibles or whatever the case may be. So I have not. I can look into see if anyone has in the main office, or what the streamlined procedure has been for these complaints. But I have not. But if you suspect that, and I'm sure that that's one of the locations that received a letter, because we sent them Manhattan wide, right? We weren't discriminating whether you're selling or not selling, or whether we think you are or we think you're not. Everyone got a letter and they were put on notice. So I'm sure that was one of the locations, but I'll also make sure to confirm that was one of the locations that got the letter.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for all the information. Señor Castillo.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So, as you know, we normally read out the crime stats, specifically the 7 major categories of crime that we track within the NYPD. That would be murder, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny, and grand larceny auto. So we track it week to date, 28-day period, and year-to-date period. So I'm going to discuss the 28-day period today. 28-day period doing very well. We're down 36% in overall crime. We're only up in one of those 7 categories, which is felony assault. We're only up 3 crimes when it comes to felony assaults, and we've made arrests on 12 of the 17 felony assaults. A lot of those assaults this period have been pretty random. We've had a couple over on 184th Street in St. Nick. One where a gentleman was struck with a bottle, another one where he was cut open with a razor. For those 2, unfortunately, we do not have arrests yet. We have some decent images, so we're looking to try to identify those perpetrators. But as I mentioned, the other 6 categories we're doing extremely well, particularly robberies. I know the last time I spoke on this panel, it was a major issue. So what we've done with the help of One Police Plaza and the Patrol Bureau here, Patrol Bureau Manhattan North, we created a robbery task force. So we have 3 lieutenants, 5 sergeants, and 30 cops working from 9 p.m. to 5 in the morning, because that's when we've taken historically the bulk of our robberies, particularly the gunpoint robberies for jewelry that we were struggling with last year. So we have that group of officers and bosses working those tours, and it's worked very well so far. It started on January 15th, and since that time we've seen the robberies dip dramatically. So for this period, we're down 14 versus 33, which is a decrease of 57%. So we're doing very well in that regard. For the year to date, we're also down in all the 7 major crime categories. We're down 23% overall. And then if you look at our enforcement numbers across the board, we're up. So we're up in traffic enforcement, we're up in gun arrests, we're up in arrests overall, we're up in moving violations, parking summonses. Across the board with enforcement numbers, we're up. So our officers has really stepped up their enforcement this year. So that's it on the crime end. We're doing very well. Hopefully that continues. We're getting a lot of additional personnel. So 2 weeks ago, downtown gave us 40 additional cops over the weekend. So Friday into Saturday, Saturday into Sunday, Sunday into Monday, we got 40 additional cops. We spread them out throughout the precinct to try to deter crimes, and more specifically robberies. It worked like a charm. We didn't take any robberies during that weekend. Last weekend, they cut it down to half of that. So we got an additional 20 cops to help us out on the weekends. And this coming weekend, we're going to get an additional 20 cops again. So downtown has been very helpful with regard to the personnel. And hopefully that continues, especially as we head into the warmer months. And as I mentioned, hopefully crime continues to go down. In addition to that, we did get 21 additional officers actually 19 additional officers back in January when they graduated from the academy. They are what we call probationary police officers. They're part of the field training unit within the precinct. It's divided into two groups. One group has 10 officers, the other group has 9 officers, and each
Yo,
of
what's up? What day was the homicide? Do you remember?
The what?
The homicide.
each of those two groups have, whoever's on microphone is on, can you mute it, please? Each of those two groups has what we call a field training officer, so more experienced officers that can kind of teach them the ropes, along with a sergeant and a lieutenant who oversees the whole program. So they do alternating tours. One group does 11 o'clock starts, and that group we have spread across 181 Street because we have historically had issues with petty larcenies in those stores, Target, Carter, those other commercial establishments. And then the guys that work in the evening, they come in at 5:30 in the evening, and they work till 2:30 in the morning. And they have been mostly spread along Dykeman or 207 Street for just additional omnipresence and, enforcement. So gotten a lot of additional personnel this year. Hopefully that continues. And, I expect that we'll continue to drive crime down with everyone's help. And that's pretty much it. That's what the picture looks like right now in the 34th precinct. We're looking pretty good. And I'll take any questions if anyone has them.
Sure, there's a question from, actually, I would love for the guest or a resident to frame it himself. Vance, all you gotta do is just unmute yourself when you can ask.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I've been living in Westside Inwood for since the early 70s, but my question is there anything being done about the tunnel at the 191st Street change station? I noticed the last couple of months, very heavy out in the open use of heroin in the tunnel. And because I don't drive, so I use the train every day, but I notice is that women and children are really having a hard time walking through because you have to walk by these users. I have walked by them. I also have taken pictures and some video. I can continue to do so. But literally I walk by and they have the needles hanging out of their arms. But all for everyone, women and children, to see. I have talked to the police on the platform, and also I sent an email to Senator Jackson. And what they said is that the tunnel is not really part of the MTA. It's really Department of Transportation.
Correct.
Right. So I wonder, and I see a big police presence now, which is great. Really happy about that. But as far as the tunnel itself, that's where now people in the neighborhood are going to do their drugs. And it's a lot of litter. But really, as far as public safety, is people that have to use these trains. They're really skeptical about walking through. And I hear them calling their family members, letting them know that either they might be late or to come pick them up someplace else because they're fearful of walking through the tunnel. And this happens, I see it a lot, I say between 4 o'clock, and 7 o'clock, right there in the tunnel. And also that station is unique because not only do you have the train station, but you also have the upstairs where the token booth is, and then you have the tunnel. Mm-hmm. So I see it's very difficult to have manpower in those 3 different areas, but in those 3 different areas, there's a lot of craziness going on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I am aware of the issues. I actually received an email earlier this week regarding the very same issues. I reached out to my counterpart in Transit District 3, Sal Marchese. He has personnel assigned to that station every day. How often they check on the tunnel, that's an open question. I voiced my concerns with him, and he said that he will have his officers check on the tunnel periodically more often and address those issues. And in addition to that, I have my patrol officers who cover that sector doing at least 1 or 2 directed patrols in that tunnel during their tour. That's the most I can really ask of them at this point because we only turn out on average 4 to 5 cars a tour, and they're answering jobs consistently. So I do require them to do it at least once per tour. more if possible. Just check on the tunnel periodically, see what's going on in there. If there is any drug use, make sure they address it. We have made, not when I say we, Sal Marchese, his officers in Transit District 3 have made some arrests in that tunnel. They have been for graffiti related offenses. However, that shows that they are in there, they are paying attention. But to your point, we'll make it more of a priority, and you will see us there more often. I'm considering, I don't want to make that move yet because I mentioned the issues I have on 181 Street with regard to the petty larcenies, but I was considering maybe moving a pair of officers from the FTU program over to that tunnel to address the issue, but I kind of want to monitor it and see if we can address it with these other ways first. And then if that's not affected, then yeah, I'll consider moving those 2 officers over to that tunnel and make sure that we come up with a more permanent solution. But I'll
Thank you.
post it.
Thanks.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, we did request and received cameras inside the tunnel. So we have several cameras in that tunnel so that we can monitor it in real time. And also if a crime does occur in that tunnel, we can use it for investigative purposes as well.
Great, thank you.
Clap, clap, clap. Barbara.
Yeah, I have like a couple questions.
Now, I have 2 other people with their hands raised.
I know, but just they're kind of, some of them are quick. One is, when you mentioned it in passing, cars. I know that one of the problems with the 34th, because we have the largest area of any precinct, that you mentioned only 4 or 5 sector cars, which has been a recurring problem through for many years. And of course, Community Board 12 makes recommendations on budget and spending priorities for the district. What would be the process, or what is the word on the street about the 34th getting more patrol cars?
Well, you mean actual vehicles or cops to man those cars?
Vehicles. You only have have like per tour like 4.
Chief of Patrol, Chief Shell, had a meeting with all the commanding officers last week, and he assured us that in very short order we will be receiving additional cars. Each
Which is how many? Like, any idea?
He wasn't able to give me a number, but he did say each command is going to receive more vehicles. So,
and that will come out of just the general city budget?
I'm assuming that. I didn't ask him, but I'm assuming.
Okay, well, I'm just suggesting, Eliezer, that possibly we should have a resolution in the Public Safety Committee that we support that and that we see that as a need. Because per tour, that means, for example, for Sector Charlie, that's 1 car from below Dykeman Street all the way to 218th east of Broadway.
When I say 1 car, I mean it's really about the officers available to man those cars. So it's not necessarily a shortage of cars. It's just that we only have a set number of officers that work each different tour, so we can only put out that many cars. But we have cars available to put out. It's just we don't have the cops to put them in.
Okay, then you
although that's gotten better because we did receive these last, these 19 cops that I mentioned earlier. But
yeah,
we're putting them on foot posts because we think that'll be more effective.
Okay, also you mentioned that they're being mentored by experienced officers. It used to be typically in precincts, experience meant like 18, 19, 20 years. But I was seeing that was falling to like sergeants had like 5 years in or something. When you say experience, how many years are you seeing these so-called experienced?
Both of the officers who are the FTO, the training officers, they both have over 10 years.
Okay, well, that's better. Okay. And then also I wanted to ask gang activity. What is, 7, 8 years ago, there was really no gang activity in the 34th, 7, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is. Can you give some sense of it?
There's really not much gang activity in the 3-4. Now I will say recently, myself and my neighbor, the 33rd precinct, we had a couple of incidents where gangs who were an issue in years past were mentioned. So we're not positive that it was gang motivated or that particular gang was actually involved, but from what the complainants are telling us, those gangs were mentioned, like, hey, are you part of this gang? And then there was an incident like a shot fired or something. That happened recently. We're not totally convinced that it's going to be an ongoing issue. A lot of times people know that they're in a particular neighborhood and they know what gang is associated with that neighborhood, so they'll just throw the name out there. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's gang motivated or that it's a gang incident. But obviously we investigate it and we take it seriously. But overall, since I've been here in July, gangs have not really been a major issue.
Thank you. Mirna?
Hey, good evening. Well, it's not really much of a question, but it's more of a observation brought to my attention. So it was brought to my attention by a community member of police traffic stops on 181st Street and Amsterdam Avenue, 180th Street, 179th Street in Amsterdam, taking up two driving streets during rush hour. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the precincts, both of them, because sometimes when you're driving, you could pass through each other's streets. It's, when you're doing a traffic stop, stopping the vehicle plus a regular lane for, regular individuals to continue driving. Is there a way that the precinct could implement different strategies for enabling more traffic in the streets when doing traffic stops?
I'm not exactly sure. So we have what we call just a traditional traffic stop where one RMP or one police car will pull over another car, a civilian car. That's just a regular car stop. That definitely should not take up more than one lane. But we also have checkpoints. So a checkpoint is different. We do set it up so that we purposely slow the cars down as they come into the lane, the checkpoint lane, so that we can make observations, so it's safer for everyone. So in that situation, if we're doing a checkpoint, yes, it may take up more than one lane, but it's for safety reasons. I realize it's an inconvenience when people are trying to get places, but it's also important that we do these checks to make sure everyone that's on the road is properly credentialed and is driving safely. So I'm not sure exactly what situation you're talking about. If it's just a one car stop, definitely should not hold up traffic that badly. If it's a checkpoint, it is, by its very nature, going to hold up traffic a little bit or slow it down. So I'm not sure how we can resolve that. That's part of the job that we have to do, and I think it's an important one. So we can change the times around a little bit, but then again, we do want to make rush hour safe also. So it's kind of like a two-edged sword. But if you can get more specifics, if it's a one car stop and they're not doing it properly, that might be a training issue that we can address.
Thank you for sure. It was definitely not one of your stops, because we kind of could distinguish that as from observations. But it would just be a recommendation if it could be like shared with your precincts to not take up two lanes during those kind of incidents of just stopping people, especially during rush hour.
Okay, no problem.
Joe Alkis?
Hi guys, good evening, officers. I'm not gonna speak. I want to let our neighbors speak. I'm speaking on behalf of las mujeres de los salones de belleza. Yo sé que Josie está aquí representando. I just want them to speak. They want to address some concerns regarding the dangers of beauty salons, hairstylists, nail techs, that they're facing robberies throughout the neighborhood. So I don't know if she can hear me. ¿Me escucha?
Joel, I sent her my link. Was she able to
Yeah, she's actually muted right now. She's a Zoom user.
Okay. Oh,
She
she's
just
Zoom
has
user? Chanel,
Yeah.
can you, there you go. She got promoted. All she has to do is just unmute it.
Let me see if she can unmute herself.
Chanel, you have host rights. Can you unmute her so she can speak?
She needs to unmute herself.
Oh, she can only do it herself. Then Joel,
Señora, usted tiene que sacarle del mute, que es un botón que tiene como un micrófono que hay que dale a ese botón para que la escuchen.
What,
She might have-
Well, do you know what her concerns are? Can you just,
Yes, so I'll summarize the concerns. So there's a huge group, and I've gotten to know this large group of salon owners. It could be a nail salon or a hair salon. There's a group of about 15 of them. So she has told me a few stories that they've actually had to start closing early because these salons, after a certain time, they're being targeted by thieves because they know they have cash on hand. So now she's told me of a story of one of the employees that actually got robbed, not with a weapon, but assaulted. Luckily, she was able to defend herself, and the perp was, got away. But this is a repeating issue for them. It's about a group of about 15, and they're very concerned because
located exactly, because I don't recall. The last one I recall was about a month ago on 207th Street. Actually.
That's one of them. There's another one in 215th and
215th. That's the
215 on Broadway. She's been robbed a couple of times. I spoke to her as well.
Has she reported it though?
I would love for her to come and say it, but I don't remember her saying to me that she reported it.
Yeah, because I mean, we can't, trust me, I would definitely want to help her and do everything we can, but we need to know about it. So if it goes unreported, there's really no way for us to help her out. So the first
has there been a trend, well, reported anyway, of incidents like that or no?
No trend really. I mean, we had I mentioned the one on 207th Street, which is over a month ago. That was a gunpoint. We believe that the perpetrator knew the victim because he mentioned her by name. So we think it's an inside job, or at least that person has been there before, or knows somebody that's been there before. And then we recently took, not at a beauty salon, but at a barbershop this Monday, we took another gunpoint robbery over on 131 Post Avenue, right off the 10th. So we've taken those two, but I wouldn't say it's been a trend necessarily. Like I said, robberies overall were way down. So and commercials were down even more, commercial robberies. So again, I'm not disputing that it's going on or that's happening, but again, we need to know about it. So it needs to be reported to us so that we can properly investigate it and attempt to prevent the next one from happening, obviously.
Yeah.
So Mr. Abreu, to the extent possible, since you work for them, since you work with them, since you've seen them getting organized, encourage that they need to come forward.
She's the owner, one of the owners. Actually, they're all owners.
Well, no, but he said he has a group of about 15 businesses that he's been communicating with. So
yeah, I spoke to her earlier about.
Right, but you're saying her, I'm saying them, the group of businesses that are approaching Mr. Abreu with these concerns. Please encourage them to report it. Even if they're afraid, even if they think it's not going to go anywhere, is the only way that we'll be able to identify any patterns, especially if they have camera. Video surveillance is very important. Even if it's not their camera, maybe the establishment next to them. So please encourage them to reach out.
Yeah, and Jocelyn mentioned, first of all, I'll be more than happy to meet with them myself if you like. But also, as Jocelyn mentioned, I can have my crime prevention officer go out there and do a survey to see what can be done in terms of the storefront, where the cameras can be positioned if they have the funds to acquire cameras. And, we can give them a lot of tips to prevent it, but also aid us in an investigation if a robbery were to occur. But like I said, the number one thing is we need to know about it so we can do something about it.
Yeah.
I would love they're Spanish speaking business owners. So I would love for, to take you up on that offer, just to do some prevention, because it sounds like it is affecting their business because they're closing earlier, maybe 4 or 3 hours earlier. Eliezer has been talking to them as well as I have, and it's kind of upsetting, but is there are you in charge of something like that where we can sit down with that group to kind of talk about crime prevention, and how do I go about that?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a rookie at this. I tried to I just put my name up there, but I'm gonna put my number up now in the chat. And I'll put my email address also. So just reach out to me and we'll work it out.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Inspector, if you could include me, I'm happy to join you in any conversation with them.
Okay.
Well, I said her because they're organized around Patricia, who's there but cannot seem to figure out a way of unmuting herself. That's why I
Right.
continue to her. And I just spoke to her a few minutes ago. I guess she's not very tech savvy, but
Okay.
what I'll do and I'll propose we do is that Castillo and Minaya, we can gather them and have a meeting and they can talk about those issues. A lot of times it's just intimidation and the language barrier and 100,000 factors
Sure.
that may or may not contribute to a person coming forward. And even
Sure.
retribution at times,
Yeah.
you care when you
Agreed.
get so we'll
Yeah.
make that happen. Thank you,
Yeah.
Joel, for bringing that up. Really
For
appreciate
sure.
that.
Thank you, officer.
Yeah, on the issue of syringes and needles of the 191st Street tunnel, I have a person from On Point to Juan Perry who was raising his hand earlier, who I am assuming he would like to take a peek at it. So you may wanna, this is a good chance for you to talk now, Mr. Perry.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Yeah, so I was listening to the 34th precinct and the what they've been seeing in their observations at the 91st Street train station and specifically the tunnel. Excuse me. And we just to clarify what I'm in charge of. I work for On Point MIC, formerly known as Washington Heights Corner Project. I supervise the outreach team and public safety team. We our focus is mostly to remove hazardous waste from public spaces like schools, train stations, and parks. We also do engage with the drug using community, make sure that they have access to services. We have a drop-in center at 180th Street in Amsterdam. The exact address is 500 West 180th Street. We've been in the community for more than a dozen years, and we patrol that train station at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. And I'm seeing a lot of participants in that area now. Um, some more familiar with the Heights, and then also people who are kind of moving between the Bronx and Lower Manhattan. So there is a high number of traffic happening there, specifically within the drug using and homeless community. And I've been seeing a lot more police there in the last 2 months. Just yesterday, I saw 2 on each platform and a set at the entrance on St. Nick. So the police presence is definitely there. Getting it more into the tunnel would be probably the most beneficial. The hours that I'm sorry, I forgot the name. The hours that they mentioned that they're seeing a lot of the actual drug use between 4 and 7. Those are actually a bit out of hours. Our hours of operation are between. Excuse me. Yeah, our hours of operation are between 6 and 4:30. So the use that we're seeing is more in the afternoon as opposed to the late afternoon. Uh, I I I engage with a lot of these individuals, and I inform them that we have a drop-in center and a safe space for drug use if that's what they need to do. That's out of the public eye, and there's a number of people in the community that know us very well and they're very familiar with us, and then there's also the sect of people who are just getting to know us because they're just coming through the area. So my plan moving forward with that is to just to keep up as much of a presence as we can there. I've been handing out flyers to the MTA workers there, the 31st precinct patrolman that I see there, and anybody new, I say that I make sure they're familiar with all the programs they have available, and that they have a space to go. I can't I can't make I can't make them move when I do make contact with them, but I do my best to advise them to move as quickly as possible or find another safe space. It's a difficult conversation, but my team is out there. Um, as I said, at least twice a day, Monday through Friday, and moving forward as a we move forward, I'm trying to get our outreach hours extended to 7, so we can get more of a presence in those hours that we're not out there. And yeah, I feel like the only thing we really can do is just keep pushing the education and just trying to be as much of a present as possible. I know it's not like a expedited solution, but it's one of those things that you just gotta keep plugging at it, and hopefully we can see a larger difference further down the line.
Yeah, thank you. There was a hand that was raised and I was lowered. Do you still want to have a shot at it, Mr. Martin?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm Officer Kingston from Trans District 3. I'm an NTO here. So just to piggyback off of what Inspector Castillo said, he basically hit every point. There is a lot of cops at that station, the 191 train station, but we do go into the tunnel, but it's really enforced by the Parks Department. I don't know if anyone's in here from Parks, but we do go into the tunnels probably twice a day. I've seen Mr. Perry there myself. We go in there, they clean it up. But like Vance said, if you could keep taking pictures, that works well, and you could email the NTOs in Trans District 3. That way we could kind of put a face to these people that are shooting up inside the tunnel. If we catch them shooting up, we can't really like arrest them for shooting up because we don't know what's inside of the needles. So we can't actually arrest them for just shooting up inside the tunnel, but we can kick them out, which is called an ejection, which we do often. And also what Mr. Castillo said, Inspector Castillo, we have made about 4 arrests inside of a tunnel, but it was for graffiti, not for drugs. But we're just all, if we keep working together, I think it could make a difference in this community inside the tunnel as far as the drug use.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, officer.
Can I just add one more thing? I was attempting to share a flyer that has our basic hours of operation, our addresses. We have an additional location in Harlem that has our community outreach hotline number. Is there any way I could send that to someone to share to this room so everyone here has access to that information?
Yeah, my assumption is that you're using a telephone, so you probably don't
Yeah.
have the tools, but you can either call our office, send them whatever information, and then they'll distribute it to everyone in this room. The same way that we all got our information to come to this meeting. So I'd advise you to just contact the office. Okay?
Thank you.
Before you leave, I don't know if this question is directed to you, but Mr. Vance, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Well, two questions. One, so I have taken pictures and sometimes video of the drug use there in the tunnel and upstairs where the elevators are. I sent a few pictures today to the email address on the website for Community Board 12. I don't know if anybody's manning that.
Yeah, our assistant, Chanel, is
Okay.
the person that handles the website.
Yeah, it's coming from my personal email, Vance Viscarando at Gmail. So I can continue to do that. I mean, and I just need to know also, Officer Marte mentioned another place to send pictures of that. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll put a couple of our NTOs. I'll put our job emails inside of the chat. That way you could just see it after, and you could send those pictures directly to our emails, which we check all day long. And we'll be able to see it like at the time that you send it, and we could probably shoot over there and help clear out the station in the timely manner.
Understood. Thank you. And just this is for Ms. Minaya about the cannabis dispensaries, right? Another danger is, I'll just say, for example, the one at 231st Street and Broadway, that labels itself as a dispensary, but I know it's illegal. But the people that run these dispensaries, so-called, they know little to nothing about cannabis in general, right? So the thing about what they're selling is they're getting this from people that can go online and buy, for example, an empty vape cartridge, lace it with vitamin E or whatever to cut, who knows what they're putting in it, and then putting it in a marketing, say, bag, say that they can get online that has the word Girl Scout cookies on it or something like that. And who knows really, what you're buying or what they're selling, whether it's to a child or an adult. It's just they'd have literally no knowledge of what they're selling. And that's problematic, as well.
Yeah,
It absolutely is. 231st is actually not our jurisdiction. That's the Bronx. But I'm happy to take the information. I'm sure Inspector Castillo can get it over to the sheriff's office to start that way. But let's be clear, these are not dispensaries. These are smoke shops that are illegally selling cannabis products or bodegas. Excuse me, I don't mean to say these locations are all smoke shops. But they're definitely not dispensaries. But your point is well taken. If you want to put the, excuse me, the address of the smoke shop in the chat, I'm sure we can follow up with the sheriff's office.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah. And I think the key word is that Mr. Vance said is that a lot of these people don't know what they're selling. And that has been the key ingredient in the state sales point to not teach these people, not to give the right outreach for these potential consumers as to what they're buying as well. I think that's been the key ingredient in all of this is this education process, but that's another topic in a different space in a different room. So I'm gonna say thank you all to the ones that have already spoken. And Lauren Bond, would you like to add to our conversation here, or you?
Yes, thank you. Am I loud enough?
Lauren.
Okay, louder, you say?
No, I'm reading Lauren.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Lauren.
Lauren.
Is that okay? I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes.
100%. Okay. I'm joining the meeting tonight because I'm a member of New Yorkers for Wired Tech, and we've been visiting various community boards in conversation about the 5G towers that are being set up around New York City, and the Office of Technology and Innovation has given community boards very little turnaround time on the information of these towers and why they're chosen to be in the places they are, and the environmental effects and the biological effects that these towers have. And I'm sharing this information with you. I know two full buildings in Manhattan where everyone in there is suffering from the effects of antennas and towers. And some people are having to live in their bathrooms. I lost my own apartment right during lockdown because there were cell towers put outside my window, the small antennas. There were 9 5G antennas put on the roof outside my apartment, and it injured me horribly. If you want the effects of that and all, I can send you my own report about what happened. But I had to go find a place to live quickly. I mean, the effects were just immediate. So there's certainly a lot of more technical information to share about this, but I'm encouraging you guys to be very careful about all of these being installed without you knowing all of the effects of it, because even having them on the sidewalks and you're going from block to block, you're getting inundated with this. And it has a cumulative effect on you physically.
Thank you, Ms. Bond. If you have any information that you'd like to share with us, any slides or anything related to your fight, that is also our fight. We've gone over these issues for the past couple of months in our boards or in our board, but in different committees. Be more than happy to share whatever you have with the rest of our board members. So
Okay, where should I send this then?
if you want to put it on the chat, that'll be ideal, or you can send it to in our website. Chanel, would you like to type our email address or even our website address for Ms. Bond? Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Appreciate that. And I'd like to move on
We'll
to
do that.
the 33rd Precinct's report. Lieutenant Garcia.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Lieutenant Garcia, the Special Operations Lieutenant in the 33 Precinct. I'll go ahead and give you guys a breakdown of the crime for the 28-day period. For the 28-day period, we have murder 1 versus 0. We had for rape, we had 0 versus 1. Felony assault, for robbery, we had 14 versus 16. For felony assaults, we had 19 versus 22. For burglary, we had 21 versus 7. For grand larceny, we had 19 versus 19. For grand larceny voto, we have 9 versus 9. We are 12% up for the 28-day. I go ahead and give you guys a breakdown. Actually, on February 15th, we did took a homicide at a 163 in Riverside. A male got shot in the head. Is everything under investigation at this time. We don't have much. There's a male in a blue SUV. That's all we have at the time. Is being investigated by the detective squad. And that's all I have for the moment. For the robberies, we had 14 versus 16. Out of those 14, 8 were based on physical force. 3 were cutting instruments. 2 were with firearms, and 1 with a blunt instrument. The location type was in the street. 5 of them were in the street. 2 were residential. 2 were in the playground or in the park area. 1 was in transit. 1 was at bus stop. 1 was the gas station. The other one was in the grocery, and 1 in the homeless shelter. Moving on to felony assault. For the 19 versus 22 that we have for the period, 9 of those were physical force. 7 were with cutting instrument. 2 were with blunt object, and 1 with a handgun. Out of the locations of those were 5 in the street, 9 were residential. 1 was in a bar, nightclub type. 1 was in a hall. 2 of them were in a shelter. 1 in the hospital, and 1 in a clothing store. Moving on to the burglaries, we had for the 28-day period, 21 versus 7. 8 of those were commercial. 5 were residential during the night. 5 were residential during the day. 2 were in a truck, commercial vehicle, and 1 was commercial during the night. The premises were 11 residential, 3 were in a chain store, 2 were in the street, 2 were in the supermarket, 1 was in a fast food restaurant, 1 in a bar nightclub, and 1 in the construction site. For the grand larcenies, the 19 versus 19, 7 of those were unattended property. 1 was identity theft, 8 was for a person, and 8 for an auto. Of the location, where there's 6 in the street, 6 in residential apartment, 2 in transit, 1 in the gym, 1 in the bus, 1 in the bodega, 1 in an unclassified store, and 1 in the hospital. We know for Grand Larceny Voto, then 9 out of 9, 4 of those were a Hyundai, 1 was a BMW, 1 was an Audi, and 1 was a Kia. 2 of those were running, 7 were not running, and 2 moped for the time period. We also had a male shot that walked into the hospital on February 10th, and we don't believe he was shot in the confines of the 3-3, but also right now it's under the investigation of the detective squad, and that's all we have for the moment. Any questions?
Yes, Dr. Ferreira.
Actually, this question is for the 34th precinct. I'd like to hear both reports so that I can ask my question. Officer Castillo, do we have any leads on the murder of Valeria Ortega? For context, I live 2 blocks away from Dykeman. My parents live 2 blocks away from Dykeman. We walk on Dykeman every single day, and the community is still waiting for some news, something, because this woman was in her 60s. She was going about groceries and she was caught in a crossfire. So we were hoping for some updates during the last community board meeting, but now that you're here, I just wanted to ask both, well, hopefully both precincts will collaborate with each other, but I think this is within your purview.
Yeah, so I did give an update on that a couple of community council meetings ago. We know who committed the murder. So we have an arrest, our version of an arrest warrant, a probable cause I card to arrest him. However, we do know that he fled to the Dominican Republic prior to us solving the case. So he fled before we even knew who this kid was or the fact that he had committed murder. So right now it's in the hands of our warrant squad, and they're looking for him. They're in contact with Dominican Republic officials. So hopefully he gets apprehended there and then he'll get extradited here. But we do know who committed it. It's just a matter of apprehending him.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question, Chair?
Of course you can.
Yeah, in that case, and this is for my own understanding of how things work, and you don't have to divulge practices, of course, but wouldn't there be wouldn't somebody be incriminated if, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, did he have any accomplices? Because that's the rumor on the street, right? I'm going to be straight up. The rumor on the street is that there is a suspect and the suspect is a minor. So wouldn't that mean that somebody is not incriminating, I'm sorry, is an accomplice, so to speak? You know, I'm Dominican, right? So I'm like, y la mamá, like the mother was the one, you know what I'm saying? You know how we roll in the neighborhood, right? So the first thing that we're hearing is, you know, question the mom. She was the one that shipped him to the island. You know, we know about these practices. So yeah.
With a lot of what we deal with, unfortunately, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So did the mom see the DR? More than likely, yes. Can we prove that? More than likely, no. So that's the issue with that. Unless obviously we're pulling cell phone records and things of that sort. So if something comes out of those cell phone records that indicates that she was an accomplice, of course, we will follow that up and we will make an arrest. But there was at least one other accomplice that we have yet to identify who was driving the car. So the person who committed the actual shooting and the murder was a passenger in the vehicle that we have since recovered. But we do not know at this point who was driving the car. So it's still an investigation with regard to that. But the good news is we do know who actually committed the actual murder. It's just a matter of apprehending him and bringing him to justice.
Thank you, officer. We appreciate both precincts, the work that you do. And I guess that what the community is looking for is just answers, because it was very tragic and it really, really did hit home, especially for those of us that still have elderly parents. So thank you.
No, yeah, trust me, it hit home with us. We take this we take all crimes personally, but this one in particular was, we took it very personally. It's very sad. You know, I can relate. My mom's Dominican, my mom goes shopping. So, and my mom is elderly as well. So I can only imagine what that family is going through. I've been in contact with them, and, you know, all we can do is try to bring this young man to justice. And obviously we'll continue to do that to try and get him back here.
We appreciate your work.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. I think that was sort of like put me in perspective of, you know, just walking in the streets, you could be the next innocent bystanders, but I think we're in good hands. At least I feel confident enough. We have, you know, the two of you and the CEO from the 33rd Battalion, because they really take it upon themselves to go the extra mile and do the work. So thank you. We don't thank you enough. Superintendent Miller, the last one on our list of presenters, right?
One quick question.
Oh, sorry. Julio, I thought that was an old hand. You might
Oh,
get
sorry.
more.
So, I'll lower it again. So thank you. I just want to ask a question for Tony Garcia. Maybe Casillo can also answer this as well. Have we seen like an increased cases of the use of the tranq? I think it's called the tranq drug, which is, I guess it's a animal tranquilizer that's been very prevalent, I guess, in Philadelphia, but it's really, I mean, I've seen images of it and it's really very scary seeing what this drug does to the individual. Have we seen that in our precincts? The use of that?
I have not. I'm not sure if Lieutenant Garcia has seen it, but I haven't seen any of that.
No, neither have we. Fortunately, we haven't.
Up to this point, it's a Phyllis drug. Have you seen it, Mr. Perry? Since you're the person who's in the front lines of these kind of problems? Yes.
Yeah, I got you. The drug is called xylazine, and yes, we've seen it. We've seen it in our OPCs. The participants that I know of, that I speak to, are aware of it, but it is one of those things that have been kind of popping up more frequently in the last few months, and is honestly probably going to continue. So I suggest people in law enforcement get familiar with the drug and its effects. But yeah, it's a tranquilizer, so it makes identifying overdoses in certain situations a little difficult. And for regular community members, I mean, the only thing I would say is it's kind of the same process. You're just gonna call 911. I would just go to that first, because dealing with tranquilizer, or not knowing if there's a tranquilizer involved, and you're not prepared, you're just not going to be prepared to deal with it unless you know what you're doing.
Okay.
Eliezer? Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask before the officers left, if you follow some of the Inwood and
Barbara,
Washington
hang on a second. I had
Oh,
Ms.
sorry.
Escarado first.
Sorry.
Who has spoken? Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Escarado.
Okay. I mean, I can go later, but thank you so much. And I thank you to everyone on the call for this incredible work. This has been very eye-opening. I am Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust. We are a nonprofit scientific think tank focused on environmental health and various safety issues related to telecommunications. So I'm going to talk about the polls. I will say that there are so many criminal acts in the world, but sometimes what the issue is not what is illegal, but what is perfectly legal. And in this case, in the United States, we have limits for what is allowed to be emitted from cell towers that are 25 years, over 25 years old, now 27 years old. And they are not based on long-term exposure. When you're exposed to a cell pole in front of your house, that is long-term exposure. There's also a lot of occupational long-term exposures from various networks that folks are using. However, this is pretty unprecedented, what's going on in New York. We ended up suing the federal government because of these limits. We won. We got a favorable ruling from the second highest court in the land, the DC, the U.S. Court of Appeals, DC Circuit. And the FCC, that's the federal agency that has authority over the regulation. And if you ask the city about these polls and say, well, is it safe? They're going to forward you to the FCC site and say, well, the FCC says it's fine. Our hands are tied. This is perfectly legal. It is perfectly legal. However, those limits have not been reviewed in over 27 years properly. So the court ordered the FCC to address long-term exposure, children's vulnerability, environmental impacts, their effects that are effect to neurotransmitters, to the way brains function, not just cancer, but also reproductive impacts and others. The FCC was ordered to do this a year and a half ago, and they have not responded. Now, we don't know when they're going to respond. We don't even know how they're going to respond, because there actually is no agency, not the EPA, not the FDA, not the CDC, not the NCI, that has actually looked at all of this science, even though when you go to those websites, You might think they have. However, what you want to do is find the actual report that they are talking about. The FDA, for example, has a report that's only about cell phones. It's not about DNA damage or all of these other issues that we have raised as well. It's not about long-term exposure from cell towers. In fact, they've said it very clearly. We do not deal with cell towers. However, the FCC points to it. So anyway, I'm glad to talk more and answer any questions anytime, do a presentation, but this is such an important issue. I believe it is a public health and public safety issue. Thank you. Talk too long.
Thank you, Mrs. Carrera. And again, as I told Ms. Bond, any information related to this 5G installations in our city, just be more than welcome to receive that information and spread it among our community, within our community. So thanks once again.
Okay.
Okay.
Barbara, one last question before I
Okay,
move
quick
on to
question
Superintendent
for
Miller.
both the 33rd and 34th. If you follow the Facebook groups, and many times the people are just so demoralized, they do not report it. The theft of catalytic converters off of cars, which costs, one of our neighbors, $2,000-$3,000. I read that out by Pelham Parkway, there was some sort of clinic where the police were able to install something on the catalytic converters, which made them harder to steal and also, I guess, marked them or something. And so can we have one of those clinic workshops here in the 33rd and 34th to the benefit of car owners in the neighborhood? And you know what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure what clinic you're referring to, but we can put etching on the catalytic converter so that we can, if it were to be stolen, when we recover it, we can identify what vehicle it belonged to. So it helps us with the investigation. So that's something we can definitely do an outreach, put it out on social media, get people to bring their cars here. A lot of people don't take us up on that offer, but we can put it out there, see if people will come. I'll look into the clinic that you mentioned over on Pelham Park. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but
I'll try to find it again. I think it was on Facebook. I might have seen it on the 49th Precinct Community Council page, and that they were referencing something that happened east of them in Pelham Parkway. I'll try to find it and I'll send it to you.
I'll reach out to the CO of the 49. He would know if that occurred. So
If it was on their, if it was on their community council page, that might have been where I saw it. Not sure.
thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks, Superintendent Miller. Last but not least.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. March 1st. Since the last meeting, everything at Edgecombe's been going well. No incidents in the community. We continue to support the school next door, the middle school. Just recently helped them with a fundraiser that they were doing. We've also been getting clothing donations for the residents. I did receive a message from a member of the community board, and we are going to be scheduling our annual private citizen tour like we did last year. It's going to be Tuesday, June 6th. So just like last year, anybody that's interested on going on the tour, starting off with the board members of the Public Safety Committee, please RSVP. I think we can handle up to 30 people for the tour. So I would encourage anyone that's interested to come to see Edgecombe in its new form of the transitional housing. We'll be glad to do that. And as I mentioned in the email to the gentleman, we can do a tour for his group specifically for the younger, generation. So if that's good with you, Mr. Bueno, we can coordinate that. Everything's been good. We had, like I said, we've been very intentional with what we have set up to support these men returning to the community. They have to sign agreements. They know what we're trying to do. It's very beneficial for them, so they don't want to mess it up. And for the most part, so far so good. So I'm gonna knock on wood. We've been doing it over 6 months. We have to do a report to our commissioner next month, just updating all the data. But right now it's been very positive. So that's it for me. I'll take any questions.
You're running such a quiet operation that we don't even notice you're a neighbor at times. Even their parking spots you're saving, which I love. That's where I park. So thank you. I'm going to open up the floor for anyone else that have any questions before Ms. Minaya, who's been rushing me to finish this meeting as soon as possible, kills me. So any questions? Jamirna, Dr. Ferreira, Barbara.
How many? What
Barbara, you don't have any
percentage?
questions, Barbara?
Yeah,
No.
what percentage or what, how many of the men or what percentage of the men there have been able to find gainful on the books employment, mainstream employment?
Actually, we've been very intentional with employment. So we did a cohort with job readiness, resume prep, mock interviews. The first cohort, 12 individuals went to a job fair. 11 of them were hired. We have another cohort right now that's getting ready to go to a job fair March 20th for the Barclays Center. I think we have 15 gentlemen in that cohort right now. And we're looking to expand that. And then there's a number of individuals that have gotten employment on their own. Most of the individuals that are employable are employed. We also have individuals over 60 where they're not required to be employed. We take elderly people returning that have health issues, try to give them the appropriate supports. So if they're not, they're either working, they're in a program, or they're in transitional employment, which is, temporary employment that has a component where they meet with a job developer on a weekly basis looking for permanent jobs.
May I suggest for those that are 60 or over, you look up how many Social Security credits they have, because if they're just short a few, their elderly years will be much better if they are on Social Security and Medicare. And they might be close, because any employment on the books over age 16 counts. So if they're just 4 or 5 credits short, let's get them on Social Security and soon to be Medicare.
The minute that Barbara gets chat box, GPT, all of you are out of a job. So make sure that she never gets chat GPT, that artificial intelligence that even tells us how to speak.
Listen,
just trying to help.
We have a relationship with the department. We had their manager of their Manhattan office come and meet with us. It helps expedite receiving Social Security cards. But if you get a chance, Barbara, just send me an email so I can follow up on that.
Okay, the other thing is there's a big job fair at Highbridge Park Pavilion, Highbridge Park Center. It was discussed at the general meeting last night. I believe it's March 5th. I'm not quite sure when. Call Ebenezer tomorrow, but it's big and it's got all sorts of government agencies there and so forth. So get all your guys over there.
Thank you.
It's this week.
Can I get a motion to call this meeting for adjournment?
It's Saturday, March 4th, Superintendent, from noon to 4 p.m. at the Recreation Center.
Seconded, sorry. Seconded.
Meeting's over. Have a great night, y'all.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.